Hello there, and welcome to the third video in the MyPlasm CNC instructional installment. This is 1.0.7a of the MyPlasm system. As we make updates, we will be making changes to these videos. This video, as I said earlier, is going to talk about hotkeys. The hotkeys that we'll be working with are going to be strictly related to this main screen here. There are other hotkeys and keys that we can use on other open screens in this software. So for this video, we'll be talking about the main screen hotkeys. Now, when I say hotkeys, I'm not just talking about the keyboard. I am also going to be talking about the right and left clicking keys and other ways to access parts of this screen and move around on this table. So one of the first things when you set up your table that you're going to encounter is being able to move your table around faster. Now on the smaller systems, you may not want to go as fast because you don't have as much room to, let's say, get up to full speed. These systems can travel quite fast. So for the most part, when you're jogging around the table, either using your up, down, left, and right keys, you won't be needing to go that fast. However, if you do decide to go that fast, there is a hotkey for that, and that's to hold down the shift key. So if you hold down the shift key on your keyboard and hit your up or your down or your left or your right, and if I hold down my shift and hit right, it's going to increase and travel extremely fast. Same thing, shift key, and you'll notice my X values here are moving incredibly, that's my plasma on, incredibly fast through these numbers here. So just simulating that, moving rather fast. On the opposite end of the spectrum, let's say you did want to move around slowly and wanted to get those micro adjustments, those fine adjustments to get the torch exactly where you want it to be. The way you would do that is by holding the control button and hitting the left button, and you'll notice by holding the control, the actual x-axis is moving much slower than it would without it on here. So that's normal function. This is simulated with speed here, and then again we have that shift to increase the speed, make it go faster here, control to make it go slower, and this is for any motion across the table. Another feature that you're going to want to run with your system, especially as you get started, is test firing your plasma cutter. Now in this system, the space key is the torch on-off switch. So you'll notice up here, I'm going to go ahead and simulate the fire, and it'll give us a little tiny logo or a little tiny graphic here showing us that the torch has been triggered to fire by hitting the space key, and then I can click to hit that off again. Similar, I can just hit the key right here in order to get that to respond, but the space key is always nice to have around. You can also hit play when you're starting your cut, so it's going to go ahead and try to simulate a cut here when I hit play. There we go, come down, touch, move, okay. And this is going to attempt to fire the system while running through your cut. One way to run through a cut without having your plasma fire, so let's say you want to do a test run of the file itself, you can always hold shift and hit play, and you'll notice sim shows up here when I hold shift. So no, not holding shift and hitting play, and now it's going to simulate the cut without ever firing the plasma cutter. And you're going to notice that here there is no little torch or firing icon, even though it's running through areas where it's supposedly supposed to be cutting. So that's a useful little feature in order to simulate your cuts. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape, which is also the stop button. You can also resume by hitting F6. That's just going to resume from where you last started. However, with this system, I don't have anything actually running there, so we're not going to see that. Another aspect that you'll find here is you can also hit, let's see, function F5 here, and by hitting F5 I can get it to run the cut as if it was running with the plasma on. So it's actually going to act as our play button here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit stop. I'm going to hit F5 again, and we're going to see it's just going to run the code with the plasma on. By holding shift, I can run it in simulation mode with the plasma off. And if I wanted to at any point throughout this, I can just hit the space bar. So let's go ahead and hit the we should be able to, oh, sorry, we actually have to force the torch on. There we go. And it should force the system to actually start cutting on those areas that it's supposed to cut. We can't see that on this screen, but we should be able to see that on the table itself. Now, let's say we wanted to move around our piece. So once we've made a piece, and we're going to go over that in another video here. Once we've made our piece, brought it in here, and got it set for cutting, we can actually move around our piece by hitting the forward one path button. That is to say, you'll notice on this screen, this blue icon is going to move. I'm going to keep hitting forward, 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 and it will move through your cut so that, let's say I wanted to start from this point because it missed this point. I can actually hit play. It's going to move the torch over to that point and then cause the system to cut that part out. And then I can just hit stop. Or I can let it keep running and cut out the rest of the piece. So this forward and this backwards button is a great way to move along the piece one cut to the next in order to, let's say, find a part that the machine may not have cut because the plasma cutter gave out, or there's a number of reasons why you'd want to do that. You can always go to the very last cut or back to the very top of the cut. And you would do that with the rewind button and then the forward button. Either one would work, but just keep that in mind as you're using the system. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on the next part here, with it, which is going to be the page up and page down. So while the system is cutting, the page up and page down key on your keyboard is going to change the THC voltage, or change the regulated height at which the torch is going to cut. So I can always hit page up or page down, and you'll notice here page up and page down cause the torch to move up and down. But while it's cutting, it's going to change the THC voltage. That's going to be listed right here by plus or minus 5 volts. Let's see if I can get it to respond in, and it doesn't respond in simulation mode here, but when you're actually cutting, you can hit page up or page down while it's cutting, and it will cause the torch to come off the material or come closer to the material based off of the THC voltage as it increases. So as you're cutting and you're seeing it dive into the material, you can always hit page up and it will lift the torch up so that you can make your cuts at the correct height, as opposed to dragging into the material, which is just going to decrease the life of your consumables. All right, so I believe that covers most of the hotkeys here. Let's go ahead, in terms of the keyboard, let's talk about right-clicking on the screen. So one of the first places you can right-click on the screen is up here. I'm going to go ahead and hit up here. This is our X, Y, and Z positions based off of our part. So this is based off of our part 0, and we're going to talk about that in another video. We can adjust that here. We could also change the material that we're using here as well, and we're going to get into that in another video. Just know that we're going to be accessing this portion of the screen by right-clicking up here. If I wanted to start from any point on my system here, I can always right-click on any specific line and have it cut or move from a given position. So let's say it didn't cut out, it started cutting about halfway through this W here. Let's use this W here, and it stopped cutting around right there. I can just say cut from this point, and the torch will come over here and actually make the rest of this cut from this point here. And it's a fantastic feature for when it does miss something, but you don't want it to cut over a place you've already cut. Beautiful function. I use it all the time. Also, similar to going just forward and backwards here, I can just right click on a part and say cut this path, and it's going to cut from this path. And again, I just clicked on that, right clicked on that path, and I clicked on the path itself. I can't click next to it, that does nothing. I can say move to here, and it's going to move the torch right there. That's about what you got. But you have to right click on the path itself and then select your points, or select your operation here. So there you go. It's a great feature, and again, when you mess up a part, this is a saving grace. One last thing that I want to show you here, when you first get your part set up, you want to set your part 0 wherever your torch is. You're going to move your torch to that position. So let's say I wanted to move it, I don't know, right here, and this is where my material is in the real world. This is where the bottom left-hand corner is in the real world over there. I'll just hit the bottom left-hand corner. and this will be my part 0. And you'll notice up here 0x, 0y, 0z is noticing this as the 0 for this part. Awesome, awesome, necessary piece of this software. So once we set our 0, we can hit play and it'll move through this cut. But let's say, for instance, that our material is skewed on the table. Now, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have to worry about that because you'll have enough material, or you'll keep the material square and just won't have to do that. However, if you wanted to have the table or have the material slightly skewed, or wanted to center all of your parts based off of this material position, you can always come through here and click your bottom left hand corner here, left click down here. That's going to be your base 0. And let's say, I'm just going to say that the material was bent off this way. So if we were running the material is coming from this corner here, and this is the angle that it's at on the table. All I have to do is right click on this far left button here, right click on it, and it's going to rotate the material, and then it's going to make the cut as if this is the correct orientation for the table. So keep that in mind. This is a great way to rotate your part in accordance to your material. Fantastic feature. Use it if you want. All of the other rules still apply when cutting. Just know that that is what it's saying is the angle of the material. So once you've done that, you should be good to go, and you can continue your cuts. That is everything that we have, at least for the main screen, on your right and left clicking. We're going to go ahead and move off to another video after this. We'll break off into something new. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, that's probably something important here. So once you have your material off, bent this way, sometimes you need to get back to reality, snap off of this material, because it won't do anything else if you're still locked in this position. So after you've made your cut at this angle, you need to go back. All you have to do is right click again, and it will place everything back to normal. You can actually work on everything on your screen here. So just keep that in mind, and we're going to get into bringing a part in.